Welcome back to the Approach Women program. This is lesson 2 on understanding anxiety. What if I told you that these people are feeling the exact same amount of anxiety that these people are feeling? That probably doesn't make much sense to you. But the thing is that anxiety is universal. It's not a question of having anxiety or not. It's a matter of how much of it is conscious and how we use those feelings internally. Everyone feels anxiety. It's just a question of how we respond to it. Some people react to anxiety in very, very beneficial ways, and some people react to it uh, in poor ways. Research shows that people actually respond best under anxiety situations, or if you can think of them as pressure situations, but they also perform the worst. The difference is the perception in one's ability. A person who has built up a strong foundation of positive experiences and positive anxiety habits will respond even better than he would otherwise to the anxiety. But a person who has been riddled with negative experiences or who has developed negative anxiety habits will perform even worse than he would otherwise. Now, a person with positive anxiety habits will feel energized, focused. He'll relish in challenging himself. He'll want to rise to the occasion. He'll be excited. He's the basketball player who wants the ball in the last minute with the game tied. He's the musician who wants to get on the big stage and prove himself. They're still scared. They still feel the fear, but they've trained themselves based on their confidence and their ability. They've trained themselves to relish the situation and to rise up to meet the standards. A person with negative anxiety habits will find forms of avoidance. He'll freeze up. His mind will blank. These are people who don't have a complete confidence in their ability to fulfill the situation, and so they'll subconsciously start finding ways to sabotage it. This is the guy who gets to the championship game and he plays terribly. This is the musician who gets up on stage and forgets the words to the song. This is the politician who gets up and under the national spotlight says something really stupid. So how do we create success? To develop positive anxiety habits, we must slowly build up to it by creating situations in which we can experience many small successive successes in a row. We need to do this to build that foundation of positive reference experiences, and then which will then lead to creating good positive anxiety habits which will help us perform in these high pressure situations. The pressure never actually goes away. That you'll never actually completely stop being nervous in front of a beautiful woman. What will change is your perception of how you of your ability in front of a beautiful woman and how you respond and how you behave in response to that anxiety. Anxiety can only be mastered through action and emotion, and not just intellectual understanding. Anxiety is, by its very nature, completely irrational, so therefore you can't conquer it through rationalization. The key to adapting well to your anxiety is to understand the emotional responses that arise in response to it, and then transfer those emotional responses into useful behavior and habits. Now, chances are your emotional responses and behavior and habits to anxiety right now are not very pleasant. And so I have to warn you that success in this program is not always going to feel completely comfortable. The more nervous, sweaty, neurotic, or emotional a particular behavior makes you feel, the more important it probably is to overcoming your anxiety and developing more positive habits. As usual, your biggest enemy is often yourself. So let's talk about defenses, and this is a very important concept, and we're going to be referring to it throughout the entire program. And defenses are basically your emotional responses to your anxiety. These are basically your anxiety habits that come up when you feel intimidated or feel in a pressure situation that you can't perform. Now, we all develop these defense mechanisms to help us avoid dealing with our anxiety. And the more anxious we are, the more extreme, the more emotional, and the larger the defenses become to protect ourselves. So these are the four primary defenses that I've identified with men who are particularly anxious around their sexuality and around women. The first one is blame or anger. The second one is rationalization or intellectualization. Third one is apathy and avoidance, and the fourth one is projection. Now, examples of these would be rationalization would be she's too busy to talk right now. That's you have no idea whether that's true or not. This is a woman you don't know, you just saw, and you're intellectualizing a reason or a situation that she is not available for you to talk to her. Second one is women from big cities are rude and stuck up. I see this all the time with men, and this one is my biggest pet peeve. It drives me absolutely crazy when I see guys make huge generalizations or stereotypes. I've seen guys legitimately try to explain to me how blonde women are ruder than brunette women, and it's completely blows my mind. It's like, dude, you are obviously more anxious in front of blonde women, and that's why you feel like they're more rude. It's a blame and anger defense mechanism in response to him not being able to handle his anxiety in a positive or useful manner. Another one, white women don't ever date Asian guys. This is projecting insecurity about race onto somebody else. I've noticed that in particular, a lot of Asian and Indian men have a lot of insecurity about their race, and they typically are brought up in very asexual homes and environments because those cultures put a lot more emphasis on professional achievement and not as much emphasis on social success or even dating success. And so a lot of these men grow up, and the way they process their anxiety is that women just don't want to date Indian men, which is completely untrue. I mean, there are plenty of Indians out there dating women of other races. It's just a mental construct they've created to protect themselves from dealing with that anxiety that's bubbling underneath. And then finally, I'll approach her after I get a drink, and this is just apathy or avoidance. This could be anything from, I've seen a lot of guys try to convince me that they get out in a bar or a party or something like that, and they're like, oh yeah, I don't really care, I don't really need to meet a woman or whatever. And it's, that they've been sitting there all week reading stuff like this for hours and hours and hours on end every single day, and then it gets to be Friday night and you put them in front of a bunch of hot girls and they tell themselves that they don't care and they're not interested, which is bullshit, obviously. So here's your exercise. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Write down every excuse you can possibly imagine for not approaching a woman. Put a star next to the ones that you use the most often. And then go back and put in parentheses which of the 4 defense mechanisms each excuse is. Now, assuming you're a guy who's experienced a lot of approach anxiety, this exercise should be ridiculous. You should be able to come up with dozens and dozens and dozens of excuses. All of us who have a lot of anxiety in this area are master bullshitters when it comes to this. We've all used tens of, possibly hundreds of different excuses to avoid approaching women in all sorts of situations. So I want you to take 10 minutes, try to write every single one down that you can think of, and there should be tons, and then go through and label which defense mechanism each one is. This should help you become more conscious of your excuses and the defenses that you put up to protect yourself, and it will help us moving on with the rest of the program. So go ahead and do that, and I'll catch you at the next